Good morning and welcome to this session of the Tourette Association's virtual conference. My name is Chelsea Tolner, Director of Outreach and Education, and thank you so much for joining us today for the Raising Tourette's, a Family Perspective for Educators session. We want to first start off by thanking our platinum sponsors, the Warner Fund and Pharma, as well as all of our donors and supporters for making this free conference possible. To support other educational programming like this, you may visit tourette.org/donate to make a contribution. During the session today, we would love to hear from you and include your voice and be able to answer your questions. You may ask questions and share comments using the questions panel on the right side of your GoToWebinar player at any time. We will collect the questions and we will provide responses towards the end of the session. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenters today. Kate Mielitz, PhD, Kaden Slade and Slada Mielitz, and Gretchen Cole-Lade, PhD. Kate, Kaden, and Slada Mielitz all have diagnoses of Tourette syndrome. Kate was diagnosed as an adult, and Kaden and Slada both were diagnosed within the past 7 years. Slade Mielitz has been married to Kate, tics and all, for over 17 years. The Mielitz family was featured in the 2018 A&E show, Raising Tourette's. Kaden and Slada have provided presentations to student teachers for multiple semesters, as well as creating video content for their YouTube channel, Tics and Twitches. Kate is an assistant professor in family financial planning at Oklahoma State University and has given numerous guest lectures on experiencing Tourette syndrome to undergraduate and graduate students in the College of Education and Human Sciences. Kate and Slade have been actively involved in bridging the gap between educators and family regarding Tourette, anxiety, and depression challenges between home and school for over 2 years. It is also my pleasure to introduce you to Gretchen Cole-Lade, PhD. Gretchen is an early childhood education assistant professor at Oklahoma State University. Her areas of expertise include inclusion, assistive technology, and family and school collaboration. Her capstone student teaching course includes presentations and Q&A with the Mielitz family regarding inclusion for students with Tourette syndrome and associated challenges. Dr. Cole-Lade has conducted numerous presentations and published on inclusion in the classroom and family and school collaboration. Thank you so much for being here today.
It is wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having us. And we're going to go ahead and kick off this party. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kate Mielitz and I am Kaden's mom. Today we do have some learning objectives that we want to make sure that we stay on track for, and also to share part of where we've been since the show. But our learning objectives today are communication techniques, not just parent to parent, parent to school, and school to parent, and that is already a lot. But as we were thinking about it, we were missing some pieces when I put the initial plans together. So we're going to go into even more. This really is an entire family experience, and so you will hear from each and every one of us, including Gretchen. We're also going to talk about the under the surface part of the Tourette iceberg and how that has been influential in our lives. And we want to make sure that we absolutely have focus on helping our children self-accept and thrive. And initially, when we proposed the session, it was focusing on younger diagnoses, but that would be exclusionary, and we are all about inclusion. So like I said, there's even more. So I'm glad that you are here with us today, and we are going to move on. So just to get us oriented, I'm going to start us with a clip from the show.
So we're at Smith Auditorium at Willamette University for our Cadence Symphony concert. First thing would be that I take, and it's so loud that everyone hears me. That would make me sad. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I swear I should hear his voice. Very little makes me tear up. But oh my gosh, just the joy
of hearing the orchestra and knowing my boy is down there on that stage and knowing he's making that sound. And he's making that sound with all these other kids. That's really, really cool. That's really, really cool.
I'm proud of myself. Performing with everyone felt like I had a million pancakes and a million tacos. It was good. That felt really good. I did have a couple ticks. I just let it go. Now let's go put our stuff in that room, Jeff. Living your life is important, and part of Tourette's is letting it go. That's part of your life. Oh, I'm so proud of you. He rocked it. I'm so stinking proud of him right now. I'm so proud of you. Me, I get to nag. I get to say, come on, practice. But this is him working. And he really just knocked it out of the park today. I think what is important with people that have Tourette's is that they're treated like a regular person. Because they are regular people. It's just they have disorder. So they have disorder. What's wrong with that? Oh my gosh. What do you think about your first official symphony? Yeah, Mom. Dang tune, dude. So proud of you. Can I please take this bow tie off? So that is Kaden then. And today we're going to catch up with Kaden and the rest of the family. And as you can see, there are definitely some changes. Not only have I gone straight silver, but Kaden is much taller and ready to share what's going on in his world. So let's go ahead and move right on to that. Kaden, catch us up, would ya?
Hi, my name is Kaden, and as you can see, all the things on the screen are about me. I'm going to be 10th grade in the fall, really like Minecraft. I do CrossFit, and I feel like I'm pretty good at it, and I have Tourette and ADHD and all that type of stuff. So yeah, since the show was recorded, we've moved to Oklahoma for my mom's work. It was fun to be a part of something big that advocated for people with Tourette. It just made it was a lot of fun, and it made me be able to connect with people, and it was just really good because I was able to help people out there. If they have Tourette, then I was able to spread the message about Tourette. I'm very excited to go back to real school in the fall since we've been online school because of all this craziness. So yeah. Nowadays my favorite thing to do in my spare time is to play Minecraft. I've gone down from the cello. I mean, I still like music, but I don't play music anymore. So yeah, I like doing CrossFit. I'm really good at it. At least that's what my mom says, and I believe her. And since the show, I've been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and conversion disorder. So big mess of things up here.
And that's okay.
It's 100% okay.
All right, let me see, where are we next? Sorry about that. Okay, so Slade has retained his lack of hair. He has not lost any additional hair, but he has retained his lack of hair. And we have learned so very, very much since the show in particular. The show was really a good launching point for us to connect with people like Gretchen, to connect with the community and kind of speak this out loud. But I don't want anybody to think by any stretch of the imagination that we have any clue at all what we're doing or that we have all the answers. But we are here today to share some of the things that have gone right and the things that have gone, let's just say, less than optimally in our lives since the show was taped. Slade, I'm going to go ahead and kick it to you and then I'll wrap us up.
So first of all, I'd like to preface everything by saying I can't believe the Kaden I have now is the same person as the Kaden I had back in 2018. Oh my lord, it's changed so much. So I don't have Tourette's, as you may recall from the show. So I'm my own little island in the sea of Tourette's here in the Mields household. Of course, I have the dogs too, but they bark an awful lot. So, you know, depending on the day, it's kind of like, you know, all the same thing. So I've learned a lot over the years as the the sole non-Touretter in the family. First of all, Tourette's has like been a part of my life ever since I met Kate back in 2003. Pretty much had the uh, whole spectrum of everything happening. You know, I had taco salad barked in my face. I almost had my nose broken from her twitching when I'm trying to hug her. You know, have children bark in my ear. You know, all that stuff. It's crazy. That is the easiest stuff for me to deal with, so to speak. However, the hard part is the underlying things. You know, the anxiety, the OCD, the saying sorry a million times, that kind of thing that just can be a bit much for me sometimes. I think my biggest thing I've learned is I'm really concerned about my children and their comorbidities regarding their futures. You know, being the neurotypical person in the family, I know how harsh life can be. You know, I was in the military for 20 years, and I know that there's certain expectations that, you know, if you're different, that the expectations aren't necessarily going to bend just because you have differences from other people. And I myself have anxiety, depression, ADHD, ADD, XYZ, I don't know what else. But I've learned that just because I can deal with my anxiety, it doesn't necessarily mean my children can. That's hard to remember sometimes for me. I think my biggest mistake I've made as a parent, so to speak, is I've let my frustrations get in the way sometimes of being the neurotypical person in the family. Again, going back to those things that I've seen in life, I kind of let the frustrations overwhelm me as a parent sometimes, and you know, at times that makes me question, you know, how good of a dad I am, how good of a husband, that kind of thing. But fortunately, I have Kate with me to like talk me off the ledge, you know, and say, "Oh, you're gonna be okay. It's okay." She pets me a little bit here, and, you know, all's well. But that's pretty much what I have to say.
And Slade really is. I mean, as I hope you know, he can be hard on himself, and it is absolutely a partnership. We cannot do this, you know, without one another. Some people can, and some people are phenomenal single parent families with children with Tourette. And I got to tell you that Slade and I bow to that, because this is something that if it weren't our partnership, whew, I don't know how we'd make it through. We have made mistakes, and we're going to talk about those as we go on. But I mean, we're talking about things that could include lunch detention. Absolutely not necessarily the thing that we want to do. And I think that's a future slide when we come back to it. So we'll absolutely address that. We do make mistakes. We do continue to learn, and we try really hard not to repeat the mistakes that we've made in the past. But as Kaden and Slada can attest to, it's not always perfect. All right, Slada, it is your turn to catch us up with you.
All right, well, I am Slada. It's really great to be here today. But I am Caden's little sister. I am a level 1 competitive cheerleader. Cheerleading is probably one of my favorite things to do. Even though it's really hard, it's a bunch of fun to do. I'm an Uno shark because I beat my mom 10 games to 0. She won 0, I won 10. But I love board games. Sometimes I can get really competitive. But I think it's a great way to spend family time because I just like board games. But I will be in 5th grade in the fall. I just finished 4th grade. But I was diagnosed in December 2018, and I think that's about it.
And Slada also has anxiety, OCD, and ADHD. So she has
Yes.
joined the full realm. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we've been up to. Gretchen.
Absolutely, I'll join in. First, I have to say that the Mielitz family as a whole and as individuals are truly some of my very favorite people in the entire world. And the moment I met Kate, when she came to campus the first time, I thought, this can be a lifelong friend. And so I think that all the stars aligned to be able to have the Mielitz family inform my students. As the introduction said, for the past 6 years, I've been training early childhood education pre-service teachers to meet the needs of all children in their future classrooms. I certainly have an emphasis on inclusion and not sending kids to the office and not taking away recess and teaching all of those absolute strategies to my future teachers. However, one of the things that was missing was reality of let's bring someone in who can actually talk about their experiences. And so the description of the classes, as we said, the class is called Capstone, which I kind of like the name of that. It truly is the capstone of all of the classes they've taken. They take it while they're student teaching. We meet every Tuesday evening. Slada has cheer that day. And so, boy, if we could switch that day, I think we probably would, because she has been such a phenomenal presenter too. But so Kate and I kind of brainstormed up the very first time we met. Okay, we weren't on a Tuesday schedule. I wasn't in charge yet. And so Kate came in and did the presentation, which was great. It still was a meaningful presentation. But then the next semester we moved to Tuesday evening, well, 4:30 to 7. And that's when Kate and I said, you know what, let's bring the family in. Let's have the kids help do the presentation. And so they would join us. And in Capstone, we do lots of different topics. We do education law. They get ready for their certification test. So it's a structured class. And Kate and her family have been guest lecturers for one of the classes. And so the classes range in size. You know, again, education is taking a hit in life, and so we've had large groups, and then we've had some particularly small groups. But so they come every Tuesday. They're exhausted, and they attend class with me, and then any guest lecturers I have. For the benefits of a live student presentation, I will share with you all that there's nothing like it. To have Kaden talk about second grade, and you know, he's talking to teachers who are going to teach second grade, and to have Slada talk about her challenges in class and how she has had teachers help accommodate her tics so that way she can stay in the class and still be an active member of whatever activity is going on. And so, and I'll share with you that at one point, Kate, and the thing is, what I love about the Mielitz family is they are real. You know, Kate, Kaden is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, and because he's a teenager, and I met him when he was an early middle schooler, and we all know how early middle schoolers are. And so Kate at one point was like, you know, sometimes it's hard as a parent to determine, is it Tourette or is it being a teenager? And at one point, Kaden mouthed off something in the presentation, and I kind of looked at Kate and went, I think that was the teenager. And it was just delightful to have, you know, that kind of an interaction, because, you know, I think as Kaden, you know, you so eloquently said in the A&E clip, that, you know, Tourette is part of who you are, but it isn't who you are. You know, you are a teenager. And that's what came across very clearly in all of the presentations, is that you know, we share so much more in common, and we can take away and smile and laugh and kind of roll our eyes and go, oh my gosh, And so one of the things that I'm a qualitative researcher, which means that I love to tell stories and I love to hear stories. And so over the semesters, I have always asked my students 2 questions after the Mielitzes leave our class after their presentation. And one is, what is something or things you'll always remember about Tourette syndrome based on the Mielitz family presentation? And then the second one is, how will what you learned from their presentation impact you as a teacher in the future? And so with the shared reflections, I've gone over them again. Overall, a couple of things emerge from their reflections. Number one is the importance of informing everyone and having meaningful communication between everyone. And so, as Kate said at the beginning, it's not just parent to parent or parent to teacher, it's everyone. And so the students really, after listening to the stories, realize that, you know what, there needs to be clear communication between the student and the teacher. They need to develop a relationship where they work together to determine what's the best thing for the student in order for them to be as successful as possible. And Kaden, something that you emphasize so beautifully, and it's something I will carry with me and talk about every time I get a chance to talk to early childhood educators or educators, period, is the fact that you know, we talked about how, you know, one of the strategies you all have come up with teachers is to take a break. However, and that's a great strategy, don't get me wrong, but Kaden, you so beautifully said, don't tell me when to take a break. That means you need to take a break. You know, that you as the person with Tourette needs to be the one to say, I need to take a break, not I'm getting on the teacher's nerve. And so the teacher comes up and goes, hey, go take a break. That's offensive. And what it does is it not only tears down the relationship between the teacher and the student, but it also takes away the empowerment we want our students to have to be self-advocates. And so I have learned so much or relearned so much from. So communication was key, but I also want to read just a couple of quick things under the what you learned from the presentation impact you as a teacher. One said, I will be sensitive and aware that the words I let be said in my classroom can impact a child for the rest of their life. And I think how powerful that is. The words I let be said. And so, you know, Kaden, you talked about teachers who ignored other kids being mean. We can't ignore that. We got to step up. As educators, we got to step up and go, okay, stop. Let's have a meeting and talk about what hurtful is. And what better ways we can say, if you're frustrated about something, let's talk about being frustrated. You know, Slade, you talked about, you know, the family dynamic of hearing I'm sorry again and again and again. Well, you know, we need to talk about that in class too. You know, that when we get frustrated, what do we do? But it doesn't mean we hurt each other. Something that Kate taught. Dr. Mielitz taught us that it is important to talk to your students about their behaviors. One idea she gave me was to ask students what I can do to help them and then implement the changes to see if the behavior changes. And so again, communication. And then finally, what I love is, you know, something they'll always remember. Kate, you had said the only thing consistent about Tourette syndrome is the inconsistencies. This is one thing that will really stick with me after this presentation. And so many fabulous things were shared. And again, you know, we can all read about it in a textbook. But what you all have done is you've put a face on it. And so, you know, my final bullet for this particular slide is that in our master's program, we have students who go straight through their bachelor's and get a master's in early childhood education. And several semesters ago, the Mielitz family came in to present to a pretty large cohort of early childhood educators. And one of the young women in the group was had planned to get her master's. She ended up doing her creative component on Tourette syndrome because of the presentation and her desire to get the word out about these are strategies that we can actually put into practice. And so, you know, again, it's kind of like dropping the pebble into the water, the ripples go far. And so I have truly been honored and privileged to be a small part of bringing this information out to future educators.
Thank you, Gretchen. And before we go to the next slide, you know, we capitalized, we really did. We capitalized on the fact that the show had just aired. My faculty was very supportive. We have used clips of it in each of Gretchen's classes to orient. And here's the thing, I know that not everybody has had the same experiences that we've had. Not everybody has been on TV, not everybody wants to be on TV. But here's the thing, you can have a similar impact on early childhood educators or other educators. And absolutely, please don't forget about, or if you didn't know about, please know that the Tourette Association has a youth ambassador program, has training for educators, has trained volunteer educators, and education advisory board. And we are looping Gretchen in to connect with Wendy to help find ways to expand the reach. And if you want to do something, if you want to, you know, train emerging educators, please reach out to Wendy Wegman at the Tourette Association. And, you know, we can absolutely start that conversation so that you can have that impact in your area as well. This is something that is not just this narrow piece, but it helps to inform what teachers can see. And as I'm sure you are all aware, Tourette for one child is not necessarily Tourette for another child. And so having more and more voices is extremely important. All right, Gretchen, I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to kick us off on the iceberg before we spoke to the family.
Absolutely. I think, you know, number one, you know, research indicates that 80% of us are visual learners, and I disagree with that completely. I think we're all visual learners. Give me a picture and it will stick with me forever. And when Kate brought this particular picture into her presentation with our student teachers, this is the number one thing whenever I ask what's something you will always remember across the board, and I didn't want to ruin it in the last slide, across the board they said it's the iceberg. And it gives me goosebumps because, you know, this truly goes to knowledge of child, that we need to understand that it isn't simply a tick. You know, if it were just a tick, how easy Kaden, Slade, and Kate's life would be. And so when we understand that there's so many other things, and several of them also, you know, talk about the handwriting, that Kaden does a handwriting activity with the early childhood educators where he interrupts them as they're writing and they have to start over again. And Kaden, they will talk about how frustrated they got and how, you know, not angry, but they got close. Yeah, okay, it was a long day for them, remember? And so I think that it's so important that this information is shared as well with not only educators, but also with classmates to say, hey, look, it's not just me making a sound or ticking. It is that I have all of these other things that go with it. And so, you know, I think it goes to that meme that says, you know, we all carry something. Be kind to each other. And so the iceberg, Kate, has always been the one key thing across the board that student teachers have said. I will always remember that it is not just the vocal or motor tics. And so I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you. Let's see here. All right, Kaden, you're the, oops, I'm sorry, I went too far. Kaden, you're gonna kick us off with tackling two of the things. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go as a family through the pieces that are underneath the water. And Kaden, I wanna turn this over to you to talk about sensitivity issues and disinhibition.
So I have sensitivity issues and a lot of other issues, but sensitivity issues and pretty much makes me sensitive to a lot more sensitive to literally everything. As an example, when I was trying to switch to contacts a couple months ago, you can touch your eye. It's just a bit weird, but I could not actually touch my eye. It literally took me 30 minutes to get the courage to touch my own eyeball. I mean, that's kind of weird, but yeah, it felt like 10 times the pressure that I feel like another person would feel because my sensitivity is multiplied tenfold by what I used to feel before I had these 10 sensitivity issues. Sensitive to light, to sound, the texture of objects, and smells. Pretty much the only thing I'm not sensitive to is the texture of things that are in my mouth. So like food, liquids, that type of stuff. Yeah. I generally have access to a soft blanket to keep me calm because I always need something soft. I legit cannot fall asleep without a soft blanket. Yeah, and sounds and lights are really the worst ones for me since I have chronic migraines. They've been going on for like the last 2 years, every day, and that really does affect it a lot. It just makes it a lot worse, and it really is annoying. Now we're gonna go on to disinhibition. Disinhibition in my mind is kind of like Tourette's, but you don't know it's coming, and you feel even worse after it because there's a difference between Tourette and disinhibition.
At least in your experience.
Yeah, at least in my experience, because I can always feel when a tick is coming on, but not the case with my disinhibition. An example is last year, in history, we were learning about the Irish potato famine, and my disinhibition made me say the Irish deserve to die. So yeah, and
Not just say it, but do what, Kaden?
and apologize.
Well, no, before that, yell it out, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay, so tell us what happened. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I wanted to make sure that we had the emphasis that you actually yelled this in the class.
Yep, totally fine. Yeah. So then I apologized to my teacher, and let's just say it did not go down well. What he saw as an admission of guilt. It was not an admission of guilt. It was me feeling sorry because I was sorry because that was not a politically correct thing to say. That was very rude, and I really didn't like it. I was also told to go to the hall, and just yeah. You have to realize something. You do have to realize something. For me at least, there's a difference between disinhibition and Tourette. I'm always gonna say sorry for my disinhibition because it can literally be anything, and it's gonna change. It's not always there. Sometimes I can hold it off, but I can't always hold it off. So I'm gonna say sorry. I don't mean the things I say. I don't like saying them either.
Well, and I think it really ties back, Kaden, when you were told to go to the hall to what Gretchen was saying about the teacher telling you, bye-bye.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Now that I think about it, yes, you are correct.
Okay.
So now my sister's going to talk about anxiety and OCD. So that's cool. Yes.
Okay. So anxiety can be serious. It's important if you have anxiety to not compare your experience with anxiety to others' experiences, because all anxiety is different. But anxiety, some things you may see from anxiety based on my experience is mood swings, not liking yourself, worrying about things that don't make sense to worry about, and sometimes anxiety can make you want to not do anything and just be lazy. Anxiety can also overwhelm you. So that's what I'm going to talk about for anxiety. But segueing into OCD, some people think OCD is just having to make things perfect, but sometimes it's not true. For example, my room isn't very clean right now, or organized right now, as you could say. But I would like it to be though. But basically, since my anxiety overlaps with my OCD, there's a big old fight going on up here. And I have a hard time figuring out where to start, and I get kind of overwhelmed. So it's easier for the anxiety part of my brain. I just give up. My OCD though gets worse, and then it just turns into a loop. Fighting, thinking, fighting, thinking, blah blah blah. And then as a competitive cheerleader, sometimes I have to make sure our practice mats line up just right, so that can sometimes delay the practice until it's done. But so I guess that kind of makes stereotypes maybe a little bit true. But yeah, I believe it is his turn to talk about
Yes,
stuff.
it is my turn. So I'm looking at the iceberg here, and I'm looking at all the comorbidities under the water, and I'm like, what here hasn't my child done before? A lot of it is, again, that whole Tourette's thing. A lot of the not disinhibitions, the comorbidities, I can kind of like let slide off my back like I'm a duck in water, that kind of thing. But however, there are a couple that tend to be more problematic for me as an individual and as a parent. First of all, not to beat a dead horse, but the anxiety thing again. Again, I have anxiety. I've had it since I think about 2003, or that's when I was diagnosed. It was here before then too. But sometimes
That's
I
not
really
actually
wish.
correlated with your marriage to me, right?
No,
I mean, you
it
had it
nothing to do with
before.
that
It was
because I
just
was in
diagnosed in
Korea when I was
2003, right?
diagnosed.
Okay. I just want to make sure the listeners know it's not on me.
No, nothing with you. No, we were on separate sides of the world. No worries. But sometimes I really wish my kids could take the anxiety, and yeah, it causes problems, but I kind of wish they could take it and let it go for the most part. I just realize that sometimes there's not anything you can do about it. It might stress you out, but just kind of let it go. I largely have done that in my adult life. Yes, there are times when my anxiety comes along and smacks me alongside the head and says, no, it's not going to be that easy for you. But then I remember after a while again with Kate, with the petting of my lovely bald head, I remember that I'm an adult. And again, like Slata said, everybody's anxiety is different. So I need to remind myself an awful lot about that. But again, a big part of that anxiety issue, like when one of the kids, they just stop functioning and they're like, no, I can't do it because of my anxiety. Again, that is a big area of concern for me for their futures, because I know that the real world is not always very easy. And then another one is impulsivity, hard to say. That is another big one for me, because the kiddos, they like to take food that they're not supposed to have at all hours of the day, and they're like, oh, I couldn't help myself. In my head, that's kind of hard to believe sometimes. I understand that, yes, there are certain things that they can't do, or they can't well, they can't do, I guess. They can't control. Thank you, Slata. Sometimes I doubt the fact that they just can't do it. Again, it kind of goes back to that balance of where is Tourette's and where is, being a little monster like kids can be sometimes. I'm very big on personal responsibility, and again, I just kind of doubt, that all the time is just impulsivity, that they can't handle it, or they can't control themselves. Yeah, that's the magic word of the day. But yeah, between the two, those are the biggest things for me. We have handwriting difficulties, we have depression, we have ADHD off the charts some days, we have OCD, social communication problems. I mean, I have those myself too, so it's not that big of a deal to me. Second nature. But yeah, but other than that, I'm managed to make it through it.
So far.
So far.
Well, and with Slade, one of the things that I want you to know is we can tick all day long. Kaden has coprolalia, Slade appears to be beginning some coprolalia, and we can tick all day long and twice on Sundays, or however you want to phrase it, and it doesn't phase him. It's the stuff that's below the surface. And I think that this is really, really important to emphasize here, because if you are watching this as an educator, you may see the same child at school that we see at home. You may also see a different child. There are examples of stories that have been shared, qualitative, to go back to Gretchen's point, that, you know, well, I don't see that in your child. What are you talking about? You're having these struggles at home. Or, oh my gosh, what do you mean you're not having this problem at home? I've got this big influx of challenge and disruption in my classroom. And so I want you to know that one of the best things that we can do is help the children, whether our students or their our babies, but, you know, letting them talk it out and being interested and asking those open-ended questions in order to figure out what is going on, and working as teammates, teachers and parents, parents and teachers. And we're going to talk a little bit more in just a little bit about communicating with the children as it's going on. Like I said, Kaden has coprolalia, and Slade is starting to develop a trend in that direction. And it is extremely difficult sometimes out of nowhere, because as Gretchen mentioned earlier, teenager versus Tourette. But the key thing that I want parents to remember, I want teachers and other people to remember, is you've got to know the character of the child or the character of the person. Slade, I'll be completely honest, and she knows that I say this, she is more likely to be like me. I use the F-bomb like other people use salt and pepper. I can see it in her nature that it could happen. But Kaden, it actually hurts his ears. It brings him great distress. And so there's a definite difference. Now, does that mean he's never let it slip? No, he has. But I can tell the difference, and we talk that out. So coprolalia is its own interesting animal. Also, oh, Gretchen, please.
I just have a quick comment that I probably should have said back whenever I was talking about the presentation, because Kaden, when on one of your presentations, you had started to develop the coprolalia, and so it became part of your presentation that every once in a while you would, you know, tick. And what I challenged the students to do, and I didn't say anything about what they would be observing in either, you know, Slade or Kaden, or even Kate's ticks. I just said, after, because you all usually present for about at least an hour, if not, you know, an hour and a half. I said, I want you to notice how quickly you will tune into the message, and the ticks will become part of the background noise. And it gives me goosebumps. But that night, you know, because there, you know, there were F-bombs thrown by the end, and, you know, and this, you know, you never know with early childhood educators. Some of them live kind of sheltered lives. And so, but Kaden, truly, they listened to your message. And the ticks became part. So Kate, I think that, you know, that's what teachers need to do, is say, let's talk about what it is, talk about what we're going to experience, and then now let's move on to talking about history or math or whatever. And so, but yes, you're right. You know, to determine which one is which is good. But I wanted to share that too. That I think it's so important that educators understand that it can become part of the background noise. And then therefore not.
Well, yeah, and there are things as educators and as parents that we put on ignore. Well, I probably shouldn't admit that I ignore all sorts of things. I ignore all sorts of things my children do, my dogs do, my husband does, but we need to do that because we need to continue on. Same thing goes in the classroom. If you know the kid's got coprolalia, you stick it on ignore, and it's just background noise. The other couple things I want to talk about that are under the surface that I have struggled with, executive functioning and dysgraphia. And I'm going to go ahead and do a shameless plug. Tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, Gretchen and I are going to do a presentation about teaching strategies with executive function challenges. So I hope you'll join us for that. But executive function is about the ability to initiate, plan and organize, set goals, solve problems. And I grew up with no problems with this. I knew to have a to-do list. I knew that I had to set my own goals, and I just was somehow inherently, intrinsically motivated. I have got to remember, and I constantly struggle with the fact that my ability to initiate and do these things is my ability. And trying to, well, Kaden, why don't you just blah, blah, blah? Or Slater, why don't you just blah, blah, blah? It's not always that simple. And so I'll talk tonight more about those struggles, but those transition pieces. Oh, well, once you're done with the dishes, please go take a shower. It's actually not always that simple. And so that is something that we work together with as a family. And then dysgraphia, I got to tell you, sometimes this makes me giggle and sometimes this makes me very, very sad. Kaden, and he and I talked about this before I made my notes on this, but Kaden writes like a beginning writer, about like a 4-year-old's first learning to form his letters. Slada, on the other hand, I tell you what, her handwriting knocks it out of the park. My handwriting is very good. I didn't have these struggles either. So it used to drive me insane when Cade needed to do his writing practice that he would say, Mom, it hurts. No, it doesn't hurt. You need to just sit there and you need to practice. Mama, it hurts. No, it doesn't. Mistakes, okay? Lots and lots of mistakes because I'm rooted in this neurotypical world and my own experiences, saying this is easy, we can do this, and if it's not easy, we can work toward doing it. And so now we're at the point where Kaden doesn't handwrite much at all, and he has an accommodation in school with his 504 plan that he can use a computer. If I need him to remind me of something, I ask him to put it on my Google Calendar, or I ask him to send me a text or an email. So there is still a lot that we are learning and processing through with the iceberg.
I mean,
all right.
I still can write like perfectly fine, like you would see like in my age, but it takes a long time. Just to write a sentence, it might take about 5 minutes if you want it in good handwriting. I'm also okay with cursive, but no one can read cursive. I'm like, literally no one can read that. So. I mean, I can read it.
Generational thing.
No one can read it nowadays.
So,
but I can write regularly. It just takes a bit of time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kaden, for popping that in there. And I do appreciate you sharing that. Now we're moving on to communication techniques, parent to school and school to parent. So again, this is rooted in things that have gone well for us and things that just have not gone well. iMessages. And so we're going to go from the top to the gray to the yellow to the blue, just so that you know where we're at. iMessages. Remembering that teachers are human and parents are human, and the child has a problem, not that the child is a problem. And when I say problem, I'm not saying that there's something wrong. I'm saying that when we perceive what's going on, we often identify it as a problem. We need to change that language. We don't have all the time in the world to go into doing that and making those changes, but it is something that we need to talk about, changing the language. But for now, the child has a problem. The child is not a problem. And iMessages. I struggle with X, Y, and Z when the child is in my classroom. And of course, using, Cadence, Slater, or whatever the child's name is. Or I struggle when Kaden comes home from school and tells me that this happened. Owning where you're at is absolutely imperative, and it can be very, very difficult to respond and use iMessages when we are in that overprotective, and in some cases overprotective, some cases just protective mama bear, papa bear type of situation where we're like, how dare the school do blah, blah, blah. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe the parent lets the child get away with that, because we are rooted in our emotions, and we have this frustration because the world runs in a neurotypical fashion. So iMessages and taking the time, even writing out what you want to say and just getting it out on paper and then rewriting it to be iMessages. Deep breathing before a parent is called or before a teacher is called, and saying, I want to understand. And even active listening, I hear you saying, and then doing a rephrase to make sure that whether it's the teacher or the parent, you are restating what you heard so that they can make sure that you're getting the message that they are attempting to communicate. Because when we are in this, crisis kind of moment, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we are being heard, but that the other person is being heard as well. We need to absolutely put the child first. There is a diagnosis. There may be multiple diagnoses as we have, but it's about Kaden, it's about Slada, it's about John, it's about Sally, it's about the child. What do I know about the child? And when we are communicating, one of the things that we have worked to do, particularly since the show came out, is to go in and talk to the faculty or the administration, hopefully both, about what's going on. And I have definitely screwed this up. And I've put the diagnosis as the primary way to introduce my child. Well, that's not the right thing to do. The child is their own individual person and is part of a unit, family, classroom, community, and needs to be recognized as Kaden is a 15-year-old boy, Slada is a 10-year-old girl, and these other ways they identify. And then, yeah, sure, we have Tourette, we have anxiety or depression, and here's some other things that we need to communicate, but really communicating about that child and knowing who the person is. If I asked you to write a list of 10 things about yourself that you want to be identified as, or you want to make sure are associated with you when you are described, sure, maybe Tourette is on there and you want that as something people automatically say. But I want to be known personally as a kind person, a strong educator, someone who advocates for their child, someone who loves to talk about money, somebody who likes to read and garden and, have dogs. And then maybe, oh yeah, and she has Tourette and has 2 children that have Tourette. But that's secondary, tertiary, way back in the list, because the Tourette, and you've seen this, I think, in different presentations before, but the Tourette does not define me. The Tourette does not define the children. It's part of who they are, but there's so much more. So putting that child first. And then advocating. Knowing when, as educators, to reach out and talk to parents can be extremely difficult. There are parents that do not want to face that their child may need to be reviewed and receive this diagnosis. We want something perfect for our children. Even when we know that we can't achieve perfection, we want to get there, and we want to provide the best that we can for our children. Well, the best thing that we can do is love them and accept them for who we are, whether we're the educator or the parent, and advocate for what is best for the future and the present of the child. And if that means advocating as a teacher, saying, I think a 504 would be really beneficial in this situation, helping the parents see how their child is going to thrive by having this accommodation, thrive by getting even the diagnosis so we can put that 504 into play. And when I say we, as an educator, I'm at the higher education level, but putting it into play so that as the child and you progress through the education, there are protections in place so that Kaden, Slada, whomever cannot be removed from the classroom for doing something that they simply cannot control, allowing the child to have a modicum of control over themselves, when we know that having Tourette and a lot of the things under the surface takes away that control. And so advocating for what is best for the child as an individual, not as a diagnosis. And then please do know when you need to ask for help. Asking for help often, not always, but often makes us feel like we're not good enough. You are good enough. You are good enough as a parent. You are good enough as a child. You are good enough as a teacher. I don't want you to walk away thinking, I have to ask for help because I'm not capable. You are infinitely capable. It is absolutely okay to say, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle. I don't know what I don't know. And so parents knowing the Tourette Association is here to support you on a national level. Many, I believe all, but I'm not going to say it, many states have local Tourette Association chapters that can support you. You have the Education Advisory Board. There's a Medical Advisory Board. There is, if you have a question about Tourette and supporting your child in school, out of school, in the family, there is a resource via the Tourette Association. And what's really phenomenal about it is it's free. And as a professional in the personal finance realm, there's almost nothing I love more than free, okay? And that is bringing somebody in to help you talk to the administration. That it could be bringing somebody in via Zoom or even in person to talk with the family or the extended family. There are so many resources. Know when to ask for help. Know when you are feeling overwhelmed. Know that sometimes you will hear the wrong advice and you will take the wrong advice. Forgiving yourself and knowing, okay, I got to go back and ask for help again. Know that the parent knows the child best, but if they know that they are being heard, they may be willing to consider another perspective. On the flip side of that, please always remember that the teacher isn't always right, but they aren't always wrong either. So making sure that there is open communication and pretty please with sugar on top, as Gretchen likes to say, and Gretchen, correct me if I'm getting this phrased the wrong way, but if you're going to talk about me needs to be there.
Yeah, the phrase is nothing about me without me.
Nothing about me without me. And sometimes we try to shelter our children from these conversations. But what I do with Kaden and Slada is I say, okay, we're going to go in and this is where I am coming. Slada, this is where I'm coming from. Are you tracking with me? Okay, so there are things, no matter what, we love you, but we have to have this conversation and then involving them in that conversation. Gretchen, I absolutely want to turn it over to you to wrap us up.
All right, I think, you know, again, as Kate said, it's a circular experience with communication, and it has absolutely, I think the challenge with communication, whether you're the parent or the teacher or even the student, is sometimes we just don't want to take this on. You know, we want to do the 1, 2, 3, not me, not me. You know what? It'll just get better on its own. It won't. It won't get better on its own. And you know, it's been my experience just sitting in a classroom listening to Kaden and Slada and Kate that it doesn't get better, and in fact it can become very hurtful. And so when communication happens, it doesn't always solve the problem, but boy, it can make such a huge difference. And I agree. My final, you know, suggestion too with being an advocate for your child is no one ever says, yeehaw, I want my child on a 504. I understand that completely. However, and in a perfect world, we wouldn't need those darn 504s, because you know what? There is nothing good, there is nothing special about special education. Special education is good teaching. Unfortunately, either an IEP or a 504 has to happen because we have teachers out there that say that's not fair. Okay, well, you know what? Then let's make it fair. And we're going to put it in writing, and we're going to make it so that it's now documented that your child has to have these, so that at least that way it's, you know, and I hate to say we live in that world, but we do. And so, you know, so please, 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 if you're struggling with that, I love that know when to ask for help. Talk to other parents who have gone through what you're going through, so that way you get different perspectives. And Kate, I think, what a wonderful way to share, to give yourself grace in that sometimes you're going to hear bad advice and you're going to take it. And then you're going to look back and go, well, that wasn't the best thing I could have done. But to always think, okay, now what do I do next? So excellent. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Gretchen. All right, Kaden, you are back up. Why don't you talk to us about communication child to teacher?
So what I feel like you need to do to always find someone you can talk to, at least in the school, is find a teacher you can be friendly with. Well, it literally says on here, ask to talk to them. My situations and the specific things are, my situations are as a child are not the same as other children's experiences. Fault's not a good word. It's not your fault. It's no one's fault. It just happens. And you want them to advocate for you. So yeah.
Kaden, will you share with our viewers, please, a little bit about what happened that Gretchen talked about in 2nd grade and how you attempted to communicate and what happened with that process?
So I was bullied in 2nd grade because of my Tourette. I don't really 100% remember the specifics, but there was just a kid who was never nice to me. And even when I talked to the teacher, she didn't do anything.
And you were bullied specifically, he was not nice to you specifically because of tics you were making, correct?
Yes.
So Slada, I remember her walking home with Kaden one time. Slada, do you want to go ahead and share on this?
Well, I don't know what you're trying to say, but and Kaden, also, the people on your baseball field once, I believe, made fun of you and triggered your tics.
Yeah.
All right, you can continue, Mom.
Okay, thank you. And Kaden had one experience in 2nd grade. Slada had a completely different experience. And so their approaches with teachers are vastly different, and that's okay. But Kaden asked for help, and Kaden asked for help repeatedly, and the child was not handled in a typical manner, or in a timely manner, in a timely manner. And so it was constant, it was ongoing. Well, this is before Kaden really knew to come home and tell mom that this is a big problem. Also, he probably mentioned it in passing, but to me it was in passing. Oh, there's a kid being mean to me at school. Well, just ignore them. Well, saying just ignore them is a neurotypical response to something that is not a neurotypical situation. And so we've got to be cautious and taking that time. And we do have busy lives. We do have other things going on, but taking that time, that's one of those mistakes that I've made that I've learned now, that if Kaden says there's a problem at school, that means I'm stopping. Slate is stopping what we're doing, and we are attending to the communication that we are given from the children. We absolutely, as Kaden said, want teachers to advocate for the kids that they have in their classrooms, and remembering that fault is not a friendly word. All right, parent to parent. Slade, we're up. So I want to make sure that I address the fact that it is extremely scary, at least in our experience, to figure out how to prepare our neurodiverse children for a neurotypical world. The fear tends to take over, and we rely on our experiences as neurotypical, with neurotypical expectations, some of us as neurotypical individuals. So we rely on those experiences in our neurotypical world as adults, and we rely on those rules. Neurotypical children add lots of wonderful things to our lives. Well, guess what? Neurodiverse children do too. And when parenting, often with one parent who understands and one who doesn't, or both who are both completely taken aback, it's not always the easiest task, and it's not the easiest path. We struggle. Sometimes Slade and I argue about the best way to handle things or the best way to approach them. But beyond all of that, we are a team. And Slade, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to talk a little bit on this.
Catherine said, or Kate as she likes to call herself, sometimes we do argue about what is best for our children. Granted, I try to stay out of the whole Tourette's arena because I don't know much about it, and obviously I'm not the one with Tourette's, she is. But sometimes not sometimes, communication is key to the whole situation between us or any parents. Sometimes I talk her off the ledge regarding, behaviors and actions and whatnot. Sometimes she does the same for me. Sometimes I think she's wrong, but of course that is a very rare situation. And most of those times when I do think she's wrong and I finally do talk to her about it, she convinces me that she's not too far off base. And then it's definitely not easy because nobody wants to hear that they're wrong. Nobody wants to be put in their place, so to speak, when they step out of line with their spouse. One of the biggest challenges she and I have faced is regarding when it's appropriate for punishment with teachers at school. It's not that I don't understand that Kaden has a hard time controlling different issues, but again, I do resort back to that whole, I know as that neurotypical individual that life isn't always rainbows and butterflies and unicorns out in the real world. And I want my children to realize that, there are unfortunately repercussions for everything that we do in life. I know that he won't always be able to get others to understand what he's going through and what he can control and what he can't control. And there was a situation where he had lunch detention for something he wasn't able to control. And that was one of those issues that, we balanced. Well, do we push back against them or do we let it go on? I think it was a swearing issue or something. And I was of the mindset that lunch detention was acceptable because, again, it's one of those situations that, yes, there's going to be things that you can't control, but you really, really, really need to consider what's going to take place if that happens, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's it.
Well, and Slade and I have discussed it. We have made mistakes. Kaden has served lunch detention. And I'm not sure if it was a swearing thing, a coprolele thing, or if it was really tied in with his disinhibition. We have screwed up. We'll probably screw up again. Okay, and that hurts. But we talk it over with the kids after it happens. We frame it so that they understand where we were coming from. We apologize when necessary so that our children know that first and foremost, we're interested in their success, whatever that success looks like. We're interested in their success. But as Slade mentioned in the past, he served his country for 20 years. And so his framing of this is not only neurotypical, but militaristic. And that's nothing bad regarding our country's military system, but he sees the world as we each do because of the experiences that he had when he was growing up and has had as an adult. And overarching, the message I get from Slade when the door is closed and it's just him and me is he's worried. And he's worried for the future of our children, because everything that he has lived through and everything that he sees are walls and stumbling blocks. And our children are so amazing. Your children, the children in the classroom, your children at home are amazing, wonderful human beings. And he wants nothing more than to see his children succeed. And we sometimes do have a different approach to how that works. But I want you to know that we're not perfect, and we did want to come into this presentation being honest, so that you know we've screwed up and we're going to screw up again, and the best thing that we can do is talk about it and work through it and make changes as is appropriate and with the consideration of the children. Again, putting that child first, learning together. And when we put the child first, that's setting aside my experiences with Tourette. Slade putting aside his experiences, you know, with the military, with his PTSD, with other things, and just saying, okay, let's look to the root of the child. Who is Slade on the inside? Who is Kaden on the inside? And I tell you what, my children, just like your children, and yes, I say this not knowing your children, are just phenomenal human beings who want great things. We have to acclimate them to a neurotypical world. We have to advocate outside with things on Capitol Hill within our education system in order to prepare the rest of the world for the neurodiverse as well. So I don't want to say we have an obligation, but yet we kind of have an obligation to educate and grow knowledge, not only about our children, but about those around, and being inclusive and opening eyes. Recognize, yes, absolutely, that there are going to be disagreements sometimes between parents. No matter how strong a marriage is, there are disagreements, and Slade and I have some humdingers. And no, I don't beat him soundly upon the head and shoulders. I typically pet, and we come together, right, Slade? I'm not lying to you, right? Right? Okay, good. Using iMessages again, you know, when we get defensive, especially in marital conflict, it's very easy. You. Deep breath. Give me 5 minutes. Let me come back around, and let's use these iMessages. Creating time to discuss. Yeah, sometimes that's the way we, in a non-pandemic world, start a date. Okay, let's go out to dinner in the first 10 minutes of conversation. What do we need to do? What's going right? What's not going right with what's going on with the kids in school, at home? How are we responding to tics and these things that are underneath the surface? Making focused time isn't always fun, but we do always end up feeling better for it. And then one of the biggest things I have a challenge with is remembering that my childhood is not their childhood. I was not diagnosed until I was in my 20s, but I had these tics. I had some cautionary statements, but most part, I was extremely functional. Kate just had some things that she did. And when I performed, they stopped. So we just thought that they were kind of, you know, some of those nervous habits or things. And my grandmother once told me to stop making the sound that she made. She was an old lady, so she was making old lady sounds. Well, Kate, you shouldn't do that. I do that. You shouldn't do that. So stop copying me. I was able to transition that to a different tic. Not everybody can do that. And I didn't know that. So we've had some discussion and some growth opportunity to learn about that. And I constantly need to remember that my childhood and my experiences with Tourette are not those of my children. All right, Slada, we are going to have you talk about communication techniques, parent and children. Take it away, kiddo.
All right, well, first off, you gotta make sure you earn the child's trust. You can do this by listening and keeping your promises. This can be through keeping promises at bedtime or showing up on time for a meeting at school. For example, maybe showing up on time for a meeting to explain Tourette's to all of your teachers. But also, you can earn your child's trust by keeping a secret or even showing them that you love them. Sometimes with some kids, it's as simple as that. Don't try and earn your child's trust with food, because that means they might want food every time, you know, like they go out with you or something, or like when they come and talk to you. But make sure the child feels welcome talking to you. Make sure that the child knows that you will always be there for them. But basically, that's not to say that you should give them an easy way out or a way to make excuses, but that means you should cut them some slack. If they're having like a hard tick day and you're like, oh, it's okay, just go do the dishes and then go take a shower. It's not that simple, because if they're having a tick day, they just need reassurance. There we go. But the child also needs to know that you will always be there for them and always stand up for them if they need help. But just make sure that they know you support them and help them when things are out of their control. For example, Tourette's, craziness. But try to avoid anger and frustration, because that is not something the kid really wants to hear when they're explaining to you, because they're already giving you their trust, and it's hard to earn back if you lose it. But it is important to avoid yelling and bad words along with being patient. Being patient can be difficult, especially when parents, sometimes also experience ADHD and stuff that overwhelms them. But you need to remember that your child needs you. Parents should practice being calm and waiting for their child to finish their thoughts. Take deep breaths and remember your child has a problem, is not the problem, and they are not the problem. But I think it's Caden's turn. He has, I think, a few sentences.
Sorry, stupid microphone, weird computer. So I just have a little bit. A parent is also a child's teacher. So, but they're going to be there for all of your life. So the parents really need to be able to keep the trust in the kid, because if they don't, it's gonna be not the best time for both the child and the parents. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kaden.
Everyone, I just wanted to chime in real quickly to let you know that it's 12:17 Eastern time, just so you know where we're at.
All right, we are going to wrap. Slada, this is you also. If you could go ahead, and we've got just a couple more slides, so I think we'll be on time, but Slada, go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so this is child to parent. The last one was parent. Child. So, child to parent, be open, don't lie. Because if you lie, then your parents won't know how to help you. Don't hide things. Trust your parents with your information and your problems. Talk to a parent you trust about your feelings, because then you won't feel as nervous to tell them when things aren't going well. When the parent has your trust, they will most likely be calm and try to understand what you are going through. Do your best to remain calm as well, because then your parent will stay calm when they see you are staying calm. And it's Kaden's turn again.
So I'm basically just going to rephrase Slada. The main part is talk to your parents. When you're not feeling good, when you're being bullied at school, whenever you're having problems, talk to your parents. They do love you. Your parents love you. I mean, yeah. They are very trustworthy in a lot of cases. I mean, at least my parents are super trustworthy. They love me, and they always keep my secrets safe if I decide to tell them secrets, which I don't. Why am I talking about this? Yes. But just, yeah, trust your feelings and talk to your parents when you're not having the best time. They love you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kaden. And we'll talk offline about those secrets. All right, Slada, very efficiently, I'd like you to take us through self-acceptance and self-advocating for ages 5 through 10.
Know that all bodies and brains are different, and it's okay to be different. Tourette syndrome is not as rare and weird as you might think it is. There are over 100,000 kids in the world that have Tourette's. And this was just, a few days ago. So there will be lots more. But having Tourette syndrome doesn't make you weird. It makes you special. And it's good to be special because everyone's special in their own way. I've been teased before. It doesn't feel very good. You may feel like you have no power, but the best thing to do is ignore them and try not to show how you're feeling. Like if they're making you feel sad or mad, try not to show that because that will make them feel like they have more power. So what you want to do is just ignore them. And then if it keeps happening, talk to a trusted adult, whether that's a parent, I don't know, a teacher, principal, blah, blah, blah. But also, if you need help, go talk to your parent. But it's best to try and stand up, or like a teacher, but it's best to try and stand up for yourself first.
Excellent. Gretchen, do you have any other thoughts you'd like to add to that?
I'll just jump in really quickly. And I think that Slada, you did a great job summing it up. Absolutely. Because what we know is that there's a guy named Erickson who looked at psychosocial development. And basically what Erickson said is between 5 and 10, that kids are working on industry versus inferiority, being capable or not being capable. And bottom line, number one, it happens in school. And then number two, the outcome is, and we see it in Slada, confidence. That's what we want for our kiddos. Regardless whether they have Tourette or not, we want them to be confident. And so, Slada, exactly like you said, you know, that we need a support system to help kiddos through this. So yes, good job, Slada.
Thank you.
And Kaden, wrap us up, my friend.
Just remember you're not alone. Your brain and body sometimes are gonna be weird. And you are the best you. Tourette's and all this type of stuff is very weird, but you're gonna be able to get through it. You are the best you. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Kaden. I do want to open it up for questions now, but before that happens, I absolutely want to say thank you so much to Dr. Lade for allowing us to be part of her class and for being a part of our family. And we want to thank you as the Mielitz family for joining us today and for hearing part of our story and for, you know, supporting Kaden via Raising Tourette's. I do believe that Slade and Slada are frozen, so I'm hoping they'll be able to come back in. But Chelsea, we are absolutely open for questions now.
You got it. And thank you guys so much. So I'll read off some of the questions. If we don't get to all of the questions today, just know that you can always reach out to us directly at support@tourette.org, and we can make sure that we follow up to get the responses to your questions. So one of the first questions we had was, can you describe the correlation between conversion disorder and Tourette syndrome?
First and foremost, Dr. Lade and I are human sciences professionals, so not medical doctors. Conversion disorder, at least insofar as we are familiar with it, is fairly new, but is tied directly to Kaden's anxiety and not his Tourette specifically. In Kaden's case, he has moments where he freezes. He may have some mutism. Most of this is short term, but as we have been able to see, primarily is in response to an anxiety-inducing situation, whether that's walking down the street or coming into the living room or something where there's a lot more going on. Kaden, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
I was actually just gonna say exactly what you said, so I don't.
Okay, thank you, Kaden.
Great, all right, thank you. And the next question we have here is, my son is almost 12. He was diagnosed in 2018. We are on our second school board. We keep being told that disinhibition is a choice and is attention seeking. How can I get them to accept the diagnosis and the complex symptoms? They will accept some of the more classic or acceptable symptoms, but not all.
Okay, Slade, I'll let you kick this off and then I can help wrap that up because that's a hot topic.
Okay, sorry. But basically, I think just try and make it so, because it may be because they're thinking, oh, I don't want to be weird and stuff. but just make sure that they feel comfortable, because Tourette's is not as weird as it seems.
When we are talking about education boards, when we're talking about parents, when we're talking about other people, as Kaden, I believe, alluded to when he was talking about disinhibition, this is one of the biggest challenges that we as the Mielitz family have faced. It's different than a tic, as you are familiar. And so really understanding that, number one, you got to dig in and ask for help directly from the Tourette Association. Go through Wendy, she will connect you with somebody who can help explain it. But the long and the short of it is, disinhibition and Tourette's are interwoven. And the tics are things that we tend to see repetition of. Disinhibition is tied very closely, not definitively, but tied very closely with coprolalia, in that it typically means the child is going to say, sometimes do, but say things that are completely and totally inappropriate. And they might be one-liners, and then it's never heard of again. So it's just like, oh, well, that kid is mouthing off. The best thing that I can recommend is educate yourself, and the Tourette Association does have resources on disinhibition. And please, please find out if that school board would be interested in having a presentation, or somebody from the Education Advisory Board, or even a volunteer educator to come in, because that is what we are here for, and that is what Wendy will help coordinate. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kate. And then another question we have is, Kaden and Slada, what are some of the most helpful classroom strategies that you have used to help with your Tourette in school?
Slada, go ahead while Kaden is thinking, please.
Well, what was the question again?
What are some helpful classroom strategies that have been beneficial for you? So what are things that are in the classroom that help you out?
Like one time, a teacher, she was like, whenever you're having a rough tic attack or something, you can go take a quick walk down the hallway and get a drink of water and just calm yourself. I feel like that was really awesome. And it was really nice because I had a lot of tic attacks that year. That was when I was diagnosed.
Okay.
Now I totally understand what the question was about. I didn't understand what it actually was in English, because I speak English. Yeah. Okay. A couple years ago, when I was in 6th grade, I had a really nice teacher. He was my science teacher, and whenever I was having problems with my Tourette's, he would ask if I needed to take a break, and it was just really useful, and I really did like it. So that was really good. Yeah.
Great. Thank you both so much. And then another question that we have here, which I think this will probably be our last question today, but we had a parent write in and just say, how do you start with your children to be self-reflective and confident advocates for themselves?
It's not an easy path, and this can change. One of the things that Slade and I committed to even before we had children, because we had a pretty good idea that, just genetically speaking, that there's going to be a chance that our kids had Tourette. And first and foremost, we practiced being understanding. We practiced, understanding what I was going through. We really had purposeful discussion for me as an adult. Yeah, in part launched by me, but he was curious to understand, okay, what starts it, or is there something that triggers it? And with children, we are constantly finding ways that the world is mean, and we want to build these. And so it's praising, and it's focusing. It's not playing the gotcha game, gotcha doing something wrong. It's finding something they're doing right. So focusing on the things that they are doing right, first and foremost. And then when the tic attack is over, if this is related with that, if it's when anxiety is calm, whatever is going on, when you can find a moment away from that to have a conversation, and number one, praise the child for coming to you. Find what the kid is doing right, no matter how upset you are about something that got broken or something that got said, or how frustrating it is that, you know, when you ask the child to do something, they froze and they couldn't move. You know what? You came back from that and you were ready to talk to me, and I appreciate that. But helping them find what they're doing right, helping them find their successes. They already know that there are challenges. Let's not overemphasize that. And then when you have those calm moments, also talk to me, please. You know, I say to Kaden this, talk to me about what we can do next time. Talk to me about how this could be perceived. I really make my kids think I'm mean. And how you can handle that. And then please do encourage them to get involved with the Tourette Youth Ambassador program, and stand up and advocate for themselves in class and be there, or ask a youth ambassador to speak with them one-on-one to work on some of those skills. Slade, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Because I kind of jumped on it.
I think my biggest thing is when the kids are having a rough time, I just try to inspire themselves to, you know, internally or externally or whatever, just tell themselves that they can get through it. Like Kaden, for instance, you know, there's days when he goes to the gym with his mom where he tells his anxiety to go stuff it. You know, he's able to have a wonderful workout and push himself and everything. And that is really what I want my kids to be able to do, you know, whether it's go to the gym or going to school or interacting with people. I want them to be able to just tell themselves that they can do it, and, you know, get that feeling inside that, you know, they were able to do this during that challenging time, and just remember that as the days go along.
And it takes practice. It's not a one and done. It takes practice, and keep practicing with your children and keep encouraging them to talk about it, and don't hesitate to bring things up. Just tell them, I want to know more. I would like to hear about your experiences today.
Great, thank you so much. And we did have a couple of other really wonderful questions we weren't able to get to. So again, I just want to reiterate, if we didn't get to your question today, please feel free to reach out to us directly at support@tourette.org, and I'll make sure that I follow up with Kate, Gretchen, the rest of the Mielitz family to get you your responses. So we are going to wrap it up, but thank you again so much to the Mielitz family and to Gretchen for such an amazing presentation today. You will notice that when we close out the presentation, you will receive a link for a survey. We would greatly appreciate if you could complete that to provide us with your feedback. And you'll also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours that have a link to review the recording of the webinar, which we will also be posting on the TAA's YouTube channel for future viewing. Once again, thank you so much. And thank you also to our generous donors who allowed us to be able to offer this free of charge. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
See you this afternoon, Kate.
See you this afternoon, Gretchen. Hey, Chelsea, just by chance, since we recorded this, do you have the chat transcript from this? Because I'm happy to reach out via email if there's a connection point with that.
I will send you it. Yep, I actually put it in a document. So
okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you so much.
If anything I can help with, Kate, let me know.
I will, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, see y'all later.
All right, thanks, guys. Now I have to remember how to disconnect.
Just press the X in the top corner.
X in the top corner.